5 minutes past 10. Our talkback lawyer David Whiting is here at the stand-up desk in the newly refurbished studios at the ABC in Melbourne, ready to take your calls. 1300 222 774 is the number if you've got a legal problem and you'd need to just tap into the law library that David carries in his head. 1300 222 774. And a reminder, I've had a number of emails just quite curiously this week, people saying, here is a question for David, please. And just a reminder, there is no point in sending me a question for David by email or by text, because as regular listeners to the segment will know, it is inevitable that there are additional points of information or clarifications or follow-up questions to be asked. It's not possible to simply take a question by email or by text. 1300 222 774. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, John.
Any legal gossip?
No legal gossip, and there was really only one thing that caught my eye, and that's two QCs battling it out over a parking ticket in the Broadmeadows Magistrates Court.
And how did that go?
Unresolved, not finalised yet.
What happened?
Well, the federal government has given Melbourne airports the ability to issue parking tickets, but it must only issue it only has the right to issue parking tickets after it submits an annual parking plan to the federal government.
We should explain why parking tickets are a federal issue, because airports under the Constitution back in 1901...
It's a Commonwealth place.
It's a point of aviation, which in 1901 was not quite foreseeing what might happen.
Well, but then we had post offices and exactly the same issue, John. You run away from a policeman and go and stand in the post office.
And they couldn't follow you in. Or a university.
Universities, wasn't sure about that.
Used to be police were not allowed to enter a university because it was a Commonwealth place, but they changed those laws at the time of student protests.
Yes, I think
which
it's
I even remember myself.
The application of state laws.
That's right. Mm-hmm. But either way, airport parking at Melbourne Airport comes under?
Well, it's a Commonwealth place, and it's managed by the airports, the Melbourne airports, and the question arises as to who can issue parking tickets. And you can imagine that in a sense it's while it looks like public space, it's actually private space.
So a man drives his car to pick up someone at the airport and goes into the area where hire cars are allowed to park.
Yes.
He's there in a private car and he's told to move on and he doesn't, and he gets a ticket.
Yes.
He contests it.
Well, this was actually a hire car driver who was parking in that area but not displaying the appropriate tag. And the question was, is he guilty of an offence and should the ticket stand?
Why does he spend thousands of dollars on QC Junior and Solicitor to make the point?
I don't know, but gee, I'm impressed, John. Right? I'm in fact very impressed. They've got two QCs arguing over a parking ticket.
Yep.
That hasn't been given to either of them, and the argument's as yet unresolved. The argument that's been run by Melbourne airports is in part well, what does it matter? Yes, there is an obligation to deliver a plan, but so what?
And we deliver them every second year. If we don't comply strictly with delivering them every year, people still know where you can park and where you can't.
Yeah, then it's a question of, well, how many... I imagine it's an issue as to how many parks are available at what particular rates and where they are. I don't know, but I just think it's a glorious that you've got, you're spending $10,000 a day over an $800 ticket, or whatever the price of the ticket is.
Yes. It does remind me, there's wonderful stories around the legal traps. The much-loved Jack Hammond technique of challenging whether the court was gazetted as a court and whether or not this building is the appropriate place for the hearing of these charges today, Your Honour. And all of those sorts of little points that can be taken.
Yep. You only get to do it once though, don't you, John?
Challenging the magistrate swearing in and saying whether or not the magistrate has been appropriately sworn in, and can you prove that before we submit to your jurisdiction today, Your Honour? It's
up there with is the speed limit sign actually a rectangle?
Yeah, that's not bad.
It has rounded corners.
That's
been run.
My favourite one though was when someone's asked their age, they said, well, I don't know, it's only hearsay. Do you like hearsay being someone told me? I don't know for myself because I don't have personal recollection of the events, so I'm relying on what I've been told about what my birthday is.
And I have a birth certificate and someone told me that related to me.
Yeah,
is that it?
Exactly.
Yes, okay.
Do you like that?
I do. I like it. I'll remember that one. Yep. It's up there with I'd like to take the oath in the Scottish form, Your Honour.
Anything else?
That's it.
1300 222 774. The only piece I've got of information is that the new Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Victoria, Anne Ferguson, the first solicitor to have been elevated to the point of Chief Justice after a very successful stint as a judge of the court, now Chief Justice. She was, with all the usual pomp and ceremony, sworn into the position last Friday, and apparently there's a bit of tension amongst legal ranks over the former Chief Justice trying to tell the DPP that the DPP had misled the High Court on an appeal against the Victorian Supreme Court. So there's a few relationships,
some tensions there,
they're a bit frayed between people who've known each other all their lives and think that someone's done the wrong thing by them.
From both sides.
All over the joint.
Yeah.
People taking sides. Anyway, there you are. No one really cares. Let's get to your calls. 1300 222 774. Wendy in Hartwell is first with David today. Hello, Wendy.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good, welcome.
My best to also to David. I was hoping to get some advice, if I could, about an incident that's occurred or a situation in the church-run retirement village, no names, that I live in.
Yes.
We had a new resident move in opposite me across the driveway, and from the time she moved in, she was parking her large vehicle in such a way half out of her garage which prevented me from getting out of my garage opposite. And her whole moving in was rather erratic. I thought she may have problems, so I left it alone for about a month, and I took other forms of transport until I eventually had a commitment up in Bacchus Marsh, and that taxi was out of the question now. And I went to approach her about this right from the start, despite being pleasant and everything. She just smiled at me. No, she wouldn't move her car. So I said, look, I have to get out. I was present to her and said, I know you've got a large vehicle, so have I. So did the fellow who lived there before you. We can get in and out of these garages, so I went around and offered to help her, and she chose to sit in her car and argue me, and then after a while she came out with a string of expletives, 4-letter words, snarled at me.
How can we help you, Wendy? Where are you up to?
What I need is that she must have gone to management after that, because I noticed that other residents' behaviour towards me had changed too, and I was being snubbed. I received 2 letters claiming I had breached the regulations twice. Once by parking my vehicle in the driveway, other people could get through easily. I checked it out, so I could actually use my vehicle. The other one, same day, different letter, that I was in breach of regulations because I had made her moving in and her the thing to live here absolutely untenable. I'd bullied, I'd harassed, I'd intimidated repetitively, and she was starting to think about not moving in after all.
All right, so where does that get us to, Wendy?
So management was panicking. We eventually had a meeting. It took me 2 months to get a meeting about this. This lady would not attend, and that didn't bother management. They can't make her. And I did eventually manage to get the breach of regulations rescinded, but
yes,
they won't tell me what she said or what I'm supposed to have done. They refuse point blank to do that.
Yes.
And these rescinding the allegations or the letters they've sent me is conditional upon me saying nothing, so I've been effectively gagged and I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to have done.
Say nothing about what?
About the things I'm supposed to have done to intimidate, harass and bully her.
Wendy, the only thing I can suggest that you do is that you write a letter to the Committee of Management with a request that it be put on your file. So that the difficulty is going to be, and look, in an organisation like that or a place like that, there are files on every resident, and at the moment the file will contain only that person's side of the story and probably very little of what you might have cause to say. So why would you not write your own letter to the Committee of Management and tell them your side of the story, and then you're in a position where you still don't know what the complaint was, but you can speculate about what the complaint might have been and what your response is. And as there's been, the censure against you has been rescinded, that ought to be the end of it, and then see what happens. Good luck, Wendy.
Yes, good luck indeed with that, Wendy. It sounds complex. Tom in Doncaster, you're through to David now. Good morning.
Oh, hi, David and John. Thanks for taking my call.
Go right ahead.
I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't called up before.
Doubly welcome.
Thank you. Look, this is a matter at VCAT at the moment, and it's against the Department of Human Services and the Freedom of Information Commissioner.
Yes.
And it's regarding our daughter.
Yes.
Now, she was placed in our care under a permanent foster care arrangement when she was 1 year old.
Yep.
She's now 18.
Mm-hmm.
She was never adopted because her birth mother refused to sign any adoption papers.
Yes.
There's no birth father on the birth certificate. Now, 3 years ago, she requested her Department of Human Services file to try and find out any information about her birth father. Eventually, DHS provided the file and had a huge amount of information redacted. There was
It's a lot of black ink, isn't there?
A lot of black ink.
Yes.
So we appealed to FOI. They rejected the appeal on the basis that, on balance, it was unreasonable to disclose any information.
Yes.
We went to VCAT. We had 2 compulsory conferences. At the first compulsory...
Sorry, this is over the access to the file only.
Yes. Well, we actually narrowed our request to...
You just want the name of the father, do you?
We just want the name of the father.
Yes.
Right. So at the first compulsory conference, it became clear that DHS hadn't provided the full copy of the file, only an electronic copy. So there's still an extra 400 pages to the file.
Yes.
So they went away to...
do some photocopying and redacting.
Yep.
Yes.
And they did a lot of redacting. At the second compulsory conference, it finally became clear that the file did contain a name of a person who the birth mother said was the father. Yes. At the time, this person was approached and declined to have a DNA test and denied that he was the father.
Yes.
DHS has refused to release the name.
Right.
Even though the member of the compulsory conference tried her best to get them to do so.
But that's the nature of a mediator, is to look for a solution. It's not to take sides.
Yeah,
so
no,
I don't say that you couldn't suggest... I mean, the mediator was looking for an outcome.
Yes, she was.
And the answer was that... And part of that would be endeavouring to get the department to see in fact, accept your view. Yeah. And part of it would be to endeavour to get you to accept their view. That's what a mediator does. Yes.
Well, that was unsuccessful. So it's going to a full hearing. At this stage, we don't know what section of the Act they will use to deny access, but they're going to try and deny access.
So Tom, your question for David today.
Okay, a couple of questions. One is what our rights are. We've been acting ourselves.
Representing yourselves.
We're representing ourselves. Do we need a lawyer? But I think the...
Sounds to me like you're doing a pretty good job too.
I think...
Tom...
can I ask our key question, though, is that our daughter was never adopted because she was unable to be adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she'll have a better chance of getting that information if she was adopted.
If she's 18, is she allowed to be adopted?
Yes, I think that's our question. As she's now 18, she can choose to be adopted. So if we were to adopt her now, would her DHS files then be considered under the Adoption Act?
No, is the short answer to your question. Right. I don't see that they would. There would be... but even if they were, whatever grounds they're using to deny you access now would continue to be grounds that operated later on. I mean, if you're adopted, you don't get access to every line in your adoption documentation.
No, but the people who are adopted have more rights. Like people who are donor children now, the birth father doesn't have to give consent to be given that information to the child.
That's a difficult question because there's 3 or 4 different groups of donor issues. In terms of your specific questions, though, Tom, I'll take it on notice. I'll tell you next week. That will be before your hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
David.
All right, tune back in then and we'll see if we can get you some simple directions to take on
good on
that.
you.
All righty, Luke in Northcote, good morning to you, Luke. You're through today.
Oh, hi, good morning. Hopefully this is just going to be a simple question. I received an infringement notice the other day for a public transport fine, but they misspelt my name on the notice. I was just wondering if I still have to pay it.
First name or surname?
Surname.
And significantly or just trivially?
Just a letter off, but it changes the name rather.
Well, of course it does, but are they leaving off an E or something like that, or is it?
Changed an I to a Z.
All right.
Okay, and there's also going to be an issue, Luke, that presumably got your date of birth right?
Yeah, I assume so.
Right, so, if you've got the infringement notice, it'll have your date of birth on it. You could... Look, I would be inclined to try and deal with it now. My difficulty is that if you wait, and there's a judgment entered against you and an enforcement order issued and all the rest of it, you're the person who has to deal with the sheriff to say, oh, no, that's not me. That's somebody with my birth date and a name that's exactly the same as mine but for one letter. When
the cost will be way higher.
Oh, yeah, the cost will have gone, the costs could be, instead of $200, could be $1,000. When do you want to have the argument? Have the argument now, or pay it if you did it.
Was the fine properly incurred?
I don't think so. It was basically just for not having a valid concession card, even though, I was...
So you're entitled to the concession, you just didn't have it with you at the time?
Well, no, I was waiting on a renewed card from Centrelink, but... Centrelink hadn't sent it to me yet.
Okay. Well, Luke, can I say, I actually had to look at this question for a client on Friday. And the answer is that if you have a Mikey card or a concession Mikey card, that is only valid when you are, it's only valid for travel when you are using when you've got the concession proof of the entitlement to concession with you. So although the Mikey card's a bit sort of weird because let's assume that I've got a concession card. I have to go and get another Mikey card if I want to travel on a Saturday or Sunday and don't have proof of my concession with me. So it's a bit weird.
So as it stands, Luke, let's clarify this, David. If Luke contests it and it ends up in front of a magistrate, you can get a grumpy magistrate who then makes it worse for you, or you can get a magistrate in a good mood who's feeling very literal in their interpretation.
But literally he fails.
It might go your way, but you're more likely to end up paying more rather than getting off.
Yes.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Sorry, Luke.
Okay, no worries. Okay, thanks for that.
All right, Peter in Ballarat. Good morning, Peter.
How are you, John?
Welcome.
David. Look, I'm just referring to David, John, in relation to cat registration, dog and cat registration. Our local council here carried out an audit recently. The ranger arrived at our place and was checking, and we didn't have our cat registered.
Is there a local law that requires registration of domestic animals?
Yes.
There you go.
No, but wait a minute. Now, I haven't finished. Well, I did as instructed to do by the ranger to go down and register, which I promptly did the very next day. Got down to the council office, filling out the form. We got to the point where we had to put in the microchip number. I informed the woman there that, no, we haven't got a microchip in the animal. It's been desexed, but we haven't got a microchip. And she said, well, I'm sorry, I cannot register your animal.
Yes.
And I've got the form here, and it does say that, but it doesn't give us any indication as to what happens next. And she wasn't prepared to tell me what happens next.
Why don't you want to get your cat microchipped, Peter?
Sorry?
Why don't you want to get your cat microchipped?
Because I'm a Christian, and I don't believe that putting a microchip in my animal is the correct thing to do. So I've just got a moral
issue
don't know that there's anything about microchips in the Bible.
It doesn't specifically, but it does tell us about taking a mark, and I believe that the microchips in animals possibly is a mark or a forerunner to the mark that may be issued for humanity.
Wow. Okay, I've never heard.
That's what I believe.
Well, that's fine. People are entitled to believe whatever they want to believe, Peter. I've never heard anything like that before. I'm quite intrigued.
Anyway, so on that ground...
Just on that, you won't want your cat if it's desexed.
What's not good enough for me is not good enough for my cat.
Peter, if your cat was desexed, they would have tattooed its ear at the same time. I suppose you're not happy with that either.
No, but I've got all the documentation.
But was your cat tattooed?
No, I didn't get a tattoo. I got documentation.
Oh, your cat's desexed but not tattooed?
Yes. The vet was willing to do that.
Okay, now you're the Christian. Your cat may not be.
That doesn't matter, John. I have this issue. And what's good enough...
Peter, what do the local laws say?
Yes, they do say... They say that they will not register the cat unless it has a microchip.
Yes.
Now, I'm asking you, if it's not microchipped, where does that leave me
then you're
the cat?
Can the council compel you to have a microchip against religious objection?
The council. My view is that the council can require you to have the microchip if you want the cat in Ballarat. If you want the cat outside Ballarat,
can you seek a religious exemption to microchipping?
I would have thought, John, it would have been the cat's religion that would count at that point, not yours.
Right.
I'm not trying to be facetious, Peter, although it might sound that way.
Yes.
My view would be there will be a local law that says if you have a domestic animal, it needs to be microchipped and registered.
Yes.
And if that's what the local law says, that's what you're required to do,
Right.
or you're required to have the cat in a local government area that does not require microchipping, and I'm not sure there's one of them.
Peter, your particular version of Christianity must lead you into all sorts of conflicts in modern life.
John, it does, and it'll probably lead me into a lot more as time goes by.
Yes.
But I'm sticking to my guns on it.
Okay.
I'm not a denominational churchgoer.
No, I'm not asking. I just
No.
think it's really... I mean, there are people who have extreme religious views in the Jewish religion, in the Muslim religion, in the Christian religion, in all sorts of religions. There are people who pursue all sorts of individual beliefs, and occasionally, of course, it runs into and clashes with the modern world.
It does.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another example. Look, I'm intrigued. Let us know what happens, will you?
Yeah. Can I just ask one more question of David?
Yes.
David, if I don't get the microchip, reading between the lines, you're suggesting that I'd probably have to get rid of the cat
Or pay the fine.
or pay a fine.
And then pay the
Once the
fine
fine-
every time they come and...
I've got to pay a fine every time they come.
Well, a long time ago, there was a case that talked about a failure to lodge an income tax return.
Yep.
I'm alleging that you failed to lodge your 2006 income tax return.
Yeah.
And you get fined. The question is, do you then have to lodge your 2006 income tax return?
Yep.
In theory, the answer would be no, because they could never charge you with it again.
Yep.
In fact, what they now do is they now charge you with failing to comply with the requirement of the Commissioner.
Yep.
So they can do it every week if they really want to.
Yep.
Now, I would think there'll be a similar provision. If it is, you need to look and see what the local laws, and the answer would be that on the 17th of October 2017, you owned a cat that wasn't microchipped. Good, you pay the fine, and in 2 days' time we can do it again.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
You understand the public policy reasons for cats being microchipped, of course, Peter?
Well, I do. I understand where they're coming from, John,
Yeah.
but I don't see that it's as big an issue as they make out.
Okay.
And do you allow your cat to roam?
No. No, our cat's not a roaming cat.
Oh, but if it's a religious Christian, then every religious Christian wants to make it to Roam.
No, it's not.
What about the Eastern Rite people? You're doing them out, are you?
Okay.
Yep.
Peter,
Thank you, Peter.
Interesting questions that you've raised, and ones that clearly none of us have ever had to think through before. Good luck, and let us know what happens.
Thanks, John.
Greg in Craigieburn. Morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, John. Good morning, David. Thank you for your show. Could I just make one point first, please, John? It's to do with the RACV election. I received my forms last Thursday, on the 12th of October.
After the ballot had closed.
Well and truly after the ballot had closed.
Yes, I've had a number of other messages for people wondering why that's relevant. David Whiting was a candidate unsuccessfully for a position on the board of the RACV. I've had a number of texts from people saying, just let David know that here in Fairfield we got the ballot paper after the vote was taken, and there may be a number of those. David, on that issue, people are curious. Is there anything that you're intending to do about the conduct of the election?
I have written to the chairman saying where I think he has failed the membership generally, and where the organisation has failed the membership generally and a candidate, me. And I've also written to the returning officer with a number of concerns, and I've written to the scrutineer, and I intend to stop right there. The only thing that I found which is truly fascinating...
Oh, you could have gone off for an injunction.
I could have, John, but my view would be the election cost enough. Let's not spend any more on this. The bit that fascinated me is that there are 800,000 members of the RACV who don't get to vote.
Because...
Well, their website says they have 2.2 million members.
Yes.
There are about 30,000 members of the RACV club, and there are about 1.4 service members.
Yes.
So the
That's
difference...
the people who just have roadside service, but they are members of a different category. Yeah.
Yes. Then there's all the others. And
Who
there's
are...
what they call relationship members.
So
But
in other words, within a family, I've got the kids' car covered as well.
No, you buy an insurance policy or
Okay.
you buy a whole series of things, but we class them as members for establishing the 2.2 million, but we don't give them anything other than the magazine.
If you don't have roadside service or a member of the club, but you do have an insurance policy...
If you have an insurance policy alone, you are, or you have the home assist or whatever it is, you're in the 800,000 members that doesn't get to vote.
You are a member, but not a member with a voting right.
Yes. It was fascinating.
There's also a concern, and we had a number of these people saying, well, in the family here, we've got 3 cars covered. There's my car, my partner's car, and the kids' car. And there are 3 memberships, but we only get 1 ballot paper. And yet we may not all want to vote the same way. Why is that? And that's because those 3 cars are covered by 1 membership number.
They may be separate, but the issue, and if it's car insurance, I think you're still a relationship member. I think it's the service that counts. So it's, not every, if there's 3 cars in the one membership, that's one member. If there are 3 members of the household...
But you get one magazine and one ballot paper.
Yeah, but that's because some of them might be relationship members and not service members.
Well,
anyway,
certainly
it's
intriguing.
a next year problem.
Is it?
Yeah. Next year interest, John.
All right. Sorry, Greg, there you are. You've been sitting holding on for all of that.
That's okay. I brought it up. My question to David is about probate. My mother passed away earlier this year and has left a substantial estate to myself and my elder sisters.
Yes.
A certain amount of their money has been distributed to charities and grandchildren.
Yes.
And now am I just being cynical thinking that nobody has made a claim against the estate, and it's now nearly 9 months since...
Who are the executors?
My eldest sister.
There's you normally wait for 6 months after the date of the grant of probate to make substantial distributions. I mean, every estate's different. But if there are no claims lodged within 6 months and there's no notice of claims lodged within 6 months, there's no reason why the estate could then not be substantially wrapped up. Having said that, I get lots of estates where you can get 99% of the estate finalised in 8 or 9 months, and it could take another year to do the last 1% because, you got some dividends in July and you then distributed everything in August. Well, you can't lodge the income tax return till June in the following year. So, but there's no reason why you can't get 90% or 95% of it done within a 7 or 8 month period. Does that help?
Yeah, so should I just be asking the executor to go and speak to the solicitor again?
Well, what was in the estate? Was it shares and cash?
Majority was cash. There were some shares, but they've all been redeemed, apparently.
Well, in which case then the material should have gone to the accountant, who should be able to estimate the tax liability. And
fairly precisely and accurately too.
Yeah, I tend to add the tax liability plus 20% just in case we got it wrong.
Yep. Which can then be distributed later on as a final.
Yeah, which then, when the tax return comes in, you pay the bill and make the final distribution.
When all the debts, including all the tax liabilities, are done. The trouble being, the longer you hold on to funds into the next tax year, the longer you run the risk of earning income that then has to generate another tax return.
Well, if I expect that the return's going to be finalised in August, I take the money out in June. Because quite often just leave it in the trust account, because quite often you'll find...
So you'd rather not earn any income in the new financial year?
Well, quite often you'll find that the cost of the preparation of the return and all the other bits that go with it exceed the interest earned in that short period of time.
Just a matter of doing the maths, working out whether it's worth it or not.
So, Greg, I would... I think the question, if your sister's the executor, is to say what are the impediments to final distribution, and why can't we simply set aside the amount of money we estimate the tax bill to be and give away the balance?
Alrighty.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Good on you, and thank you indeed to all of our callers. Apologies if you were one of those that's waiting and didn't get through. And David, as always, thank you indeed for your valuable time.
Thank you, John.
Look forward to seeing you next week. Our talkback lawyer, David Whiting, helping you with free legal advice